The first time was wrong with the parking garage under Easton Tower. I thought I was just imagining it. I was the new overnight security contractor. Every weeknight from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., I patrolled the building 12 floors of sleek corporate offices built atop a 4-story underground garage. I had been on the job for only 3 nights when it started. The place already gave me the creeps. The lighting was dim, buzzing fluorescent tubes flickering overhead like they were holding on for dear life. Concrete pillars loomed like silent sentries. Even the air was stale, tinged with oil, and something metallic that clung to the back of your throat. But what got to me most was the quiet. The kind of quiet that feels wrong, like a vacuum. Like the building itself was holding its breath. On that third night, around 2:45 a.m., I decided to do my routine patrol, heading to the lower levels with a flashlight in one hand and my radio clipped to my vest. I started at B1, the first basement level clean, empty, and still faintly echoing the beeps of parked cars from earlier. Nothing strange. B2 was a bit darker, the overhead lights on a delay. When they flickered to life, something in the far corner moved. I whipped my light around. Nothing. I walked over to investigate. Just a discarded plastic bag stuck to a tire. Nerves, I told myself. I made my way down to B3. As I scanned the concrete landscape, I noticed the elevator doors had opened by themselves. That's not unusual. Elevators cycle sometimes, but when I got closer, I realized the floor display didn't read B3. It read B4. There was no B4. The blueprints the company had shown me clearly listed 3 levels below ground. Even my access card had permissions from lobby to B3 only. I stepped into the elevator. Security override. Floor B4. The panel glowed in dull red letters. No buttons, no controls. Just a slow, mechanical hum as the doors closed behind me and the car began to descend. I slammed the emergency button. Nothing happened. No radio signal. Just static. The lights above me flickered, and for a moment, I thought I saw shadows moving behind the metal paneling, like hands pressing against it from the inside. My stomach turned. After what felt like forever, the elevator stopped with a jolt. The doors opened with a loud hiss. The air was different cold, but not the kind of cold that comes from poor insulation. This was a dead cold, the kind that belongs to forgotten places. The level was darker than the others. Emergency lighting ran in a single strip along the ceiling, flickering red. Water dripped from somewhere, the sound echoing unnaturally. As I stepped out, I noticed the cars old, rusted, and covered in a thick layer of dust, like they'd been parked for decades. But none of them matched any current models. They looked like relics from the 1960s, untouched, unmoved. Then I saw the walls. Not concrete. These were old brick, like the remains of some other structure. And they weren't dry. They were wet with a black sludge that seemed to pulse slightly when you looked at it too long. A low scraping sound came from somewhere behind the nearest pillar. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing off the walls. No response. Just ... breathing. Not mine. Not normal breathing. This was wet, ragged, hungry. I turned and shone my flashlight across the garage, and that's when I saw it. A figure, thin, long-limbed, hunched over like its spine had snapped in half. Its skin was stretched, gray and almost translucent, veined with black. Its head jerked up when the light hit it, revealing eyes so black they didn't reflect anything it opened its mouth in. I swear to God it was full of teeth that didn't end. Not rows, spirals. I stumbled back into the elevator, slamming my fists against the door. The thing crawled toward me, not walking, but dragging itself, its limbs bending in ways they shouldn't. It moved fast, just before it reached the elevator. The doors slammed shut, and the car rocketed upward on its own. I collapsed in a corner, panting, when the doors opened again. I was on B1. The display read B3. I reported the incident, but they laughed. "There's no B4. they said. Maybe you were half asleep. I quit that same night. But here's the thing. The next day, I got a text from a private number. You weren't supposed to leave. Come back. It's still hungry. Back. It's still hungry. 3 weeks. I tried to forget about what happened in that elevator. Told myself it was stress, exhaustion, maybe even some kind of hallucination. But no matter how I spun it, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had noticed me. Down there, that I'd been marked. Then I got a call from the Easton Tower site manager, a man named Clark Withers, voice tight with concern. We're missing someone, he said. Night guard. Name's Joel Travis. Worked your old shift. He never clocked out 2 nights ago. Car is still in the garage. A thick, cold knot formed in my gut. Have you checked the security cameras? I asked. There was a pause on the line. That's the other thing, Clark said. Something. Wiped the feed between 2:40 and 3:15 a.m. Just static. Never happened before. I told him I'd come in. Against every instinct, screaming in the back of my head. I returned to Easton Tower that night. I parked outside. No way, I was going back into that garage. Inside, the lobby was quiet. Clark was waiting, pale and anxious, holding a keycard in a trembling hand. I don't know what's happening, he muttered, but something's not right. This place, it feels different, like it's watching. He handed me the keycard. Joel's last known location was on B3. His radio went dead just before 3 a.m. I hesitated. Have you ever heard of a B4? Clark blinked. There's no B4. I didn't argue. I took the elevator alone, stopping at each floor on the way down, checking for anything blood, a dropped flashlight, maybe Joel's jacket. But the place looked too clean, like someone had scrubbed it. Erased every trace of the man. When I reached B3, I heard it. A voice, thin, dry, whispering my name. It was coming from behind a row of cars near the back wall. I followed it, flashlight, trembling in my grip. That's when I found the badge. Joel's employee ID, snapped in half, buried under a thin film of gray dust. The plastic was melted at the edges, like it had been, burned, or digested. Something moved behind me. I spun around and saw the elevator. The doors were open, and once again, the display above them glowed red. Before this time, I ran. I didn't step inside. I leaned in close, flashlight aimed into the shaft. The floor beneath was pure black, no walls, no light, just an abyss that seemed to suck the warmth from my skin. Then I saw them dot fingers, not attached to anything. Dozens of them, white and long, wriggling along the inside of the shaft wall like worms. Some had fingernails, others didn't. A few looked chewed off. I staggered back, nearly dropping the flashlight. The elevator dinged. Something inside snapped loudly, and then the smell hit me. Rot, damp earth, moldy cloth, but beneath that something much worse. The unmistakable copper sting of fresh blood. And that's when I heard the breathing again. Not human, not even animal. It was wet, bubbling like something trying to breathe with lungs full of water. I turned to run only to find the lights flickering violently. The cars on B3 began shaking, their alarms going off all at once, rising into a shrieking cacophony. And through that noise, I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, dragging. I glanced back once, saw Joel, or what was left of him. He stood just outside the elevator doors, eyes gone completely white. His skin was gray, like cement left too dry too long, and his jaw hung open at an unnatural angle. His voice, if it was even his, gurgled through the air. It's awake now. It knows you. I turned and bolted up the emergency stairwell, ignoring the pain in my legs, the fire in my chest. When I reached the lobby, Clark was gone. The front desk was deserted. Only the monitors remained, showing static on all basement feeds, all except 1.B4. It was a live feed at first. It showed only darkness. Then, slowly, the camera tilted. No operator visible. The image swayed, grainy, and wet. Then the screen smiled. I swear to God, the pixels twisted into a smile, a horrible, slow curl of white where teeth shouldn't be. The monitor turned off, and all the power in the building went with it. The blackout hours, when the emergency crews finally arrived at Easton Tower the next morning. I was already gone. I didn't wait for explanations. I didn't want to answer questions. What could I even say? Hey, there's a nightmare living under your garage. But Easton Tower wouldn't let me go that easily. 2 days after the incident, I got an envelope shoved under my apartment door. No return address, no postage, just my name, written in smudged red ink. Inside was a security photo, time-stamped 2 nights prior. It showed me standing in front of the B4 elevator, except I didn't remember that moment being captured. And worse, my eyes in the photo were black, like the ones on that thing in the dark. There was something else. In the envelope, a USB drive. I shouldn't have plugged it in. The video file was named static_room.mp, for it opened with grainy footage of a concrete hallway, the kind found in old bomb shelters or abandoned hospitals. At the far end of the corridor stood a door marked with a faded stencil, B, for auxiliary storage, restricted. There was no sound, just crackling static layered over the footage. The camera moved forward, jerking like someone was holding it by hand, untrained and shaking. The door creaked open slowly. Inside was a room unlike anything I'd ever seen. The walls were covered in televisions, maybe 40, maybe 50, of them all different shapes, models, and ages. Tube TVs, flat panels, broken screens with cracked glass. But every screen showed the same thing, an image of me, standing in various parts of the garage. Some showed me walking through B1. Others showed me sleeping in my security booth. One showed me staring into the camera, eyes solid black, blood dripping from my nose. I couldn't breathe. The camera in the video swung wildly, and suddenly the view zoomed in on a single screen. That screen was different. It didn't show me. It showed the viewer, the person holding the camera, and over their shoulder, emerging from the darkness behind them, was a figure with twisted arms, eyeless sockets, and a jagged mouth that opened sideways across its face. The moment it touched the shoulder the video cut out, my computer crashed instantly. Smoke curled up from the USB port. The drive had melted into the laptop casing. That was 2 days ago. Since then, strange things have started happening around me. At night, my apartment goes completely cold between 2:30 and 3:15 a.m. I unplugged every TV and monitor in my place, but sometimes they still flicker on, playing distorted footage of the Easton parking garage, level B4. Even though I haven't stepped foot in there since, and worse, I keep getting texts, no number, no contact, just a message every night at 3 a.m. sharp. Last night's said, "You're already back. You just haven't noticed yet." Tonight's message was worse. "Look outside." I did. There was a figure standing in the alley below my window. Same black eyes, same sideways smile. It waved. It knew I was watching. I shut the curtains and turned off all the lights. Tried to convince myself I was dreaming, but I haven't slept since. I'm writing this from a motel 2 hours away from Easton. I thought distance might help. I thought maybe this thing needed proximity to find me. I was wrong. This morning, when I turned on the motel TV, it was showing level B4, and worse. I saw someone else down there, not Joel, not me. Clark Withers, the building manager. He was walking toward something in the darkness, flashlight flickering. He looked lost. His mouth was moving, like he was begging for help, and behind him, the shadows were crawling. I couldn't ignore. Whatever this thing was, this presence wasn't bound to Easton Tower. It followed me, watched me, and now it had Clark. I had to go back, but not unprepared. I packed a body cam, backup flashlight, analog voice, recorder, and a crowbar. I even called a friend Mikey, ex-military, the kind of guy who believed in ghosts, but preferred shooting first. He thought I was crazy when I told him the story, until I showed him the photo. The one of me outside the B4 elevator, with black eyes. His face went pale. He didn't argue after that. We met in the Easton Tower parking lot just after 1 a.m. The whole building was closed officially under electrical investigation, but I still had my access card. And when I tapped it at the elevator, it worked. The doors opened with that same hiss. We rode down to B3, silent, tense. Everything was exactly how I remembered. Flickering lights, stale air, the faint smell of rot. But this time, the elevator didn't need prompting. As soon as we stepped off at B3, the doors stayed open. The screen above us blinked red. B4. Mikey gripped his flashlight like a weapon. "If this is a prank," he said, "it's a hell of a commitment." Then we heard it. A mechanical hum, coming from the far end of B3, near the emergency stairwell. We followed the sound, walking slowly between the rows of abandoned cars. And there, just behind a rusted van, was something that shouldn't exist. A metal chair, bolted into the ground, with thick leather straps on the arms and legs. It looked like some kind of operating chair or an execution rig. Wires ran from it into the wall, pulsing faintly with electricity. "What the hell is this?" Mikey whispered. There was a mirror next to the chair. No, not a mirror, a screen. And on it, I saw myself sitting in the chair. Only, I wasn't sitting there. I was standing right in front of it. Mikey stepped back. "That's not a reflection, man. That's live. But it's not now." I stared at the screen. In it, the other me looked up slowly. His eyes were black. Then he opened his mouth, not to speak, but to scream. The sound didn't come from the monitor. It came from behind us. We spun around, and the elevator dinged again. A light snapped on above the far wall, and there, just barely visible in the glow, stood Clark Withers. His face was half burned, skin peeled back. One of his arms hung limply, like it was barely attached. He opened his mouth and said, in a whisper that echoed through the garage, "The chair feeds it. Once you sit, you don't leave." "Not really." Mikey raised his flashlight. "We're getting out of here." But then the walls changed. Not slowly, not subtly. One blink, and the whole structure around us was different. No longer a parking garage. We stood in a massive underground chamber, dripping with mold and crawling with cables. The ceiling arched like a cathedral, but not one built by human hands. The walls pulsed slightly, like veins. In the center of it all was another chair, larger, older, not metal, bone, and something was sitting in it. I still can't describe what it was. It had no real face, only folds of skin that twitched as it turned toward us. Its fingers were endless, wrapping around the base of the chair like roots. Its chest rose and fell in slow, horrible rhythm. And then it opened its eyes. Rows of them, dozens, all over its head, neck, and chest, glowing faintly red. Every eye locked. On me, it spoke. Not in words, not in sound. In thought. "You opened the way. You left the door unlocked. Now we are inside." The floor beneath us began to breathe, rising and falling, stretching like skin. Mikey screamed. Then something grabbed his ankle and pulled him under. Gone, just like that. No time to save him. I ran, no sense of direction. The space made no logical sense. Hallways folded into each other. Doors opened into the same room. Stairs led back to where I started, until I saw the elevator again, lit, open, with B3 blinking overhead. I dove in. The doors shut. The world snapped back to concrete. Back to the parking garage. I was alone, but on the floor next to me was Mikey's flashlight, still warm, and on the wall, freshly scrawled in something dark and sticky, was a message. "You sat in the chair. You just haven't remembered yet. You just haven't remembered yet. I left East second time, but this time, I wasn't whole. My body made it out, but something in me stayed behind. I could feel it a weight in my skull, just behind the eyes, like static clinging to my thoughts. And the worst part? I didn't remember sitting in the chair, but I didn't remember not sitting in it either. The days blurred together. My sleep was filled with loops, the sound of dripping water, the low hum of the elevator, the glint of a screen showing a version of myself I didn't recognize. The lines between memory and dream bled together. One night, I woke up in my apartment bathtub, fully clothed, water running. The mirror above the sink had been smashed, and written in the condensation on the wall were the words, "Still descending." I needed answers. I needed the truth. If the Easton Tower garage was the doorway, then someone had to have built it, designed it. I returned to the city archives. Records of Easton Tower's construction dated back to 1993, but something strange happened during the building. Multiple reports of missing workers, unexplained equipment failures, and a worker named Leo Ferris, the site's first security supervisor, who disappeared on the job. Only one of his reports remained, handwritten and filed away under internal disturbances. Here's what he wrote. "There's a floor that's not on the plans. I saw it once, during an overnight inspection. The elevator took me there without pressing anything. The air smelled wrong, like rotted time. I heard voices through the walls. Not words, just breathing. I tried to leave. But ever since, I've been seeing copies of myself, in reflections, in shadows, watching me, waiting. They say, B4 doesn't exist. They're right. It exists outside of existence. Leo Ferris was never found." I dug deeper, found a name mentioned in a letter from the tower's architect, the Iris Foundation, a privately funded group that apparently helped finance the project. I couldn't find any public record of them, but I did find their symbol, etched into the concrete beneath the Easton parking structure on the blueprints. A vertical slit, with radiating lines like a staring eye, hidden behind the concrete facade of B3. It wasn't an architectural mark, it was a seal. I started seeing the symbol everywhere, on the back of street signs, on construction sites, even once drawn in chalk on the sidewalk in front of my building. And then one night I heard the elevator in my apartment, that low mechanical whine. I ran to the hallway. Nothing, just darkness, until I looked down. A light shone underneath my floorboards, faint red, flickering like an old bulb. I pressed my ear to the wood and heard the ding. B4. I fled, took nothing but my car keys and what little sanity I had left. I drove 4 hours, ended up in a town I didn't recognize, pulled into a run-down gas station in the middle of nowhere. Inside, an old man sat behind the counter, watching a black and white TV. The screen showed nothing but snow, until I stepped inside. Then the image flickered and showed the Easton parking garage. Level B4. The old man didn't flinch. He just muttered, "You seen the chair yet?" I stared at him. "What the hell is it?" He lit a cigarette with hands that trembled. "Not a what?" he said. "A who? That thing down there, it used to be human, or maybe still is, but it's been fed too long. It's become hungry for echoes." "Echoes?" I asked. "Memories, lives, reflections. That garage, it's not a place. It's a mirror, maze with teeth. You think you're leaving, but pieces of you get left behind every time." I tried to ask more, but he just stared past me. "Once it knows you," he whispered, "it can wear your face." I left in a daze. When I got back in the car, I glanced in the rearview mirror. My reflection smiled. I didn't. And for a fraction of a second, my reflection had black eyes. I didn't sleep after the mirror. Not after seeing myself, smiling with eyes that weren't mine. I knew what I had to do. It didn't matter that I was scared. It didn't matter that it might be suicide. Whatever lived beneath Easton Tower wasn't just feeding on people. It was spreading through signals, screens, sight itself. If I didn't go back and seal it, who would? I drove to Easton in the dead of night. The building was cordoned off, under government review now, according to taped signs. But I didn't go in through the front. I knew another way. Back when I worked security, I'd discovered a small utility access hatch beside the loading docks. Most staff never even noticed it. I popped it open with the crowbar and dropped into the service tunnel below. From there, I followed the pipes. Easton Tower groaned around me, the kind of noise concrete makes when it's settling or suffering. Then I reached it, the forgotten stairwell, hidden behind rusted pipes and warning signs. The stairs were broken, pieces missing, railings rotted away. It wasn't even on the building map, but I knew it went below B3. I'd seen it once in a half-lucid dream. I descended in pitch black. No lights, no noise, just my breathing, and something else breathing with me. The deeper I went, the more I felt it pressing in, like the walls were to close, and the air too thick. It was like being digested. Finally, the steps ended, and I stood in front of a door, heavy, old, black steel, with no handle, just that symbol carved into it, the eye. I reached into my bag and pulled out a vial of gasoline and a box of matches. If I couldn't kill it, I'd burn everything around it. I pressed my palm to the door. It slid open by itself, and I stepped into B for one last time. But this time, it was different. There was no garage, no cars, no elevator, just me, standing in an infinite black chamber, lit only by a dull red glow from nowhere. In the distance, I saw the chair, the bone one, the one that had called to me since the beginning, and something was sitting in it. Me. I walked forward slowly. The closer I got, the more I saw my twins. Skin was flaking off in strips. His eyes were hollow, his jaw dislocated, hanging uselessly. But he smiled when I approached. "About time," he whispered. "What are you?" I asked. He chuckled, voice broken like a skipped record. "You left too much behind," he said. "Every time you ran, every time you forgot, I stayed, and now I'm the real one." He stood up, slowly. The bones in his legs cracked as he walked toward me. "We share the same shape now," he whispered. "But only one of us gets to keep it." And then he charged. I tackled him before he reached me, but he was stronger inhumanly so. His mouth opened too wide, and inside I saw faces, dozens of them, screaming, all the people the chair had consumed. I grabbed the gasoline and smashed the vial across his chest. He screamed, not in pain, but in rage. "There's nowhere else for you to go," he roared. "Every mirror is a window back to me." I struck the match and said, "Then I'll break every damn one." I tossed it. The flame exploded across him, igniting with a roar that echoed like thunder through the endless dark. The chamber began to collapse. Screams came from every direction. Walls split open and hands clawed through them. I ran, stumbling, toward the sound of an elevator bell in the distance. I saw it, the original elevator, flickering with life, doors open. I dove inside. As the doors closed, I saw the thing, me, burning, laughing, melting into the chair, and then the light vanished. The elevator rose. When the doors opened again, it was morning. The garage was normal, empty, silent. No B4 on the panel, no black-eyed reflection. I walked out into the rising sun, and for a moment, I thought I was free. But now, I know the truth. There's a mirror in my bathroom I haven't looked into 4 weeks. Because sometimes, when I walk by, I see my reflection standing still, while I keep walking.